Quick question. When did doing the work become a personality? Heidy Caminero is back for round two, and we're getting into the patterns that keep people stuck between knowing what they want and actually getting there. We're putting some of the biggest self improvement topics on the table and tackling them from both sides: money, self worth, identity shifts, playing small, mindset versus body, and a few pieces of wellness advice that we're officially putting on trial. If you know exactly what to do and still can't make yourself do it, you might want to take notes for this one. Let's get into part two. So, I have to ask, generally speaking, are we getting better at healing or just better at finding things wrong with ourselves? What do you think?
I think we're getting better at finding things to work on because it gives us a sense of productivity. Doesn't it just feel good to mark something off your checklist? One of those things being journaling every single morning and going through like limiting beliefs every single day and thinking, oh, what other limiting belief do I have or block? Or do I need to heal my inner child today or nervous system regulate the next day? I think because of the inundation of information, it's easy to find new things to get involved in, which can give us a false sense of productivity as if we are making progress forward. And we're not. Unless things are actually changing in our surroundings, nothing is actually changing and we're not really making progress. So, yeah, we're getting
Yeah.
inundated.
We are
You
getting inundated, and there's just so many different realms from which the information comes from these
Yeah.
days. So it's
Mhm.
easy to pick up a lot of different topics, and there's a lot of kind of organic and easy to apply stuff. So it can seem um, easy to add it to your routine, but then
Yeah.
ultimately ends up adding some overwhelm or sometimes a lot of comparison mentality. Let's talk a bit
Yes.
about the comparison mentality, especially with social media and wellness, because that can be a bit of a slippery slope.
Absolutely. It's so easy to, because we're comparing ourselves, then believe like we're not doing enough or we haven't hit the identified the right things. And we start to remove our sense of self and we start to outsource our sense of direction in life to the people that we see on social media. And I think that's why it's so important to always know your North Star, like what's your motor in life, your deeper purpose, so that you know at any given point, is this a new trend that's kind of nice to know that I'm aware of, but I don't need it right now? Or is it something that really is going to fuel me? So really being practicing that high sense of inner authority and self-awareness around where you're going and does everything is everything that is presented to you ultimately truly serving you or just a distraction?
Yeah, or just even just adding more to your plate. And this is something
Right.
that I saw clinically for years too. And I just talked about this with somebody on a call, but um, not everything is for everybody, right?
Right.
So two people can be given the same exact plan, the same exact routine, and have
Yep.
entirely different outcomes. So there's many
Completely.
other factors at play. Um, and when you're looking at social media and looking at, wow, this person did that, that really seemed to work for them. And then you take that on as kind of part of your own journey, but maybe it might not work out for you. And then it ultimately
Right.
feels defeating, tiring as something to keep up with because you keep trying more, right? So it's just
Exactly.
that's ultimately kind of what I mean by the slippery slope too is um the propensity to feel like we always need to be doing more.
Oh my gosh. Yes, you're absolutely right. But again, it goes back to that false sense of productivity. Like we're doing something, but we're not really making progress towards our bigger goals. So, really practicing a lot of discernment when we're about to hop onto Instagram and we know that we're going to get consumed by the doom scroll. Because how many times have you said, I'm going to just use it for 5 minutes, but then 45 minutes later, 2 hours later, you're still on there? I think I'm a big proponent of setting an intention before you get on social media. One question is, for what purpose am I getting on here to scroll? Is it that I'm looking for something or am I distracting myself? And number two is, what exactly am I looking to get out of this? And if I'm overly consuming, put it down once you're done and take a breath. Not jump straight into the next thing. Like, give yourself a moment to detox from all of that, what's it called? Stimulation. All of that
Yeah.
stimulation telling you, "I should be doing this. Maybe now I should be adding, I don't know, peptides to my diet, or I should be doing this, manifestation routine to get to what I want." It's very easy to get distracted, inundated, overly stimulated, so really set an intention before, I would say, going into social media, and take a moment to
Yeah.
pause between once you're done, and then the next thing that you're gonna do.
Yeah, and I mean, but keeping in mind too that people are typically posting the good side of things, and there are a
Yes.
lot of, let's say, healing journey type of things and
Yes.
posts as well of people posting their struggle, but it's usually tied to because they had a specific result or a specific outcome. So again, we're not hearing all of the struggle that they went through that didn't
Mhm.
have the outcome that we're looking for specifically. So
Yeah.
I've mentioned in part 1 with talking to you that I prefer reading different bits of media versus listening because I can hear the intonation and the NLP language and the suggestive type of stuff sometimes. And
Yes.
it's the same thing with social media. You really have to have discernment and put on the lens of, does this actually apply to me and what I'm specifically going through? Or is this just a really inspirational story to maybe take note of?
Absolutely. Yes, yes, and going back to that inner authority and always knowing what you're truly trying to get out of it. Are you looking to the social media and to the folks who are posting their highlight reel essentially? Because you're right,
Yes.
everyone will only ever post their highlight reel. What's the term? I do that too, essentially. I do that too.
Yeah,
We'll
we all do.
always post our highlight reel because we want everyone to see our triumph moment, but we are very, vulnerable. It feels very vulnerable to share the in between, to share when you're in the mud, in the muck of it, but, of course, we wanna tout it from the rooftops when we're doing really, really great. So I think it's a great point that you're making around practicing that discernment as well, that when you look at someone's Instagram account or stories, they're only ever posting the really great stuff. Some people, make it a part of their brand to show you everything in between, but that's not too many folks, so, yes, practice that discernment of,
Yeah.
"This is great what this person posted. Does it truly align with me? Is this something that is relevant for where I am right now, or is it just a distraction, really?" Yeah.
Yeah, and to put it in the most tangible terms, years ago, I knew a friend who is a doctor, and I had, found something online about these supplements that were good to take, so I was taking them, and they happened to be over, and they're like, "Why are you taking these?" And I was like, "Oh, it was recommended. It's good for your health and wellness." And long story short, they were like, "But do you actually have deficits in these things? Or do you have problems with your
Mhm.
circulation?" Or whatever I was taking them for. I don't even remember at
Yep.
this time. But the answer was no, So it's a generalized wellness routine that's
Yeah.
blanket approach for most, but realistically, it did not apply to me. And I ended up
Mhm.
still taking those supplements for a period of time, and I ended up having a bad reaction from it because then I
Oh,
was
no.
overloaded. So again,
Right.
it's, you just have to have a certain lens on things sometimes. And which leads me into the next topic, something else that I saw all the time clinically, which is what really urged me to pivot kind of how I work with people from just in person brick and mortar to more virtual remote is knowing is different than implementing and being able to
Mm.
implement, right?
Yep.
So where do you see that gap in terms of hypnosis, mindset, et cetera? Tell us a little bit about the difference and what could cause the holdup in terms of knowing to implementing.
Oh my gosh, such a great question. So the women that I work with, they're really high achieving. They most often are very self-aware. They can tell me their blocks better than I can identify them. They already know it. But that's the knowing that you're talking about, and then the implementation piece is where I come in and I excavate, why haven't you been implementing? If you already know what you need to do, if you already know what's in the way, then what's going on underneath the surface? And everything originates at the unconscious level. So my prerogative, my objective is to go underneath that hood of the unconscious mind to understand what are the background stories or the movie in the background playing in the background of her life, running
Yeah.
her life, that essentially says, "You are not the type of person who gets to have this. Therefore, you continue to be in this looping pattern." So it's
Yeah.
really a process of understanding, one, where is it that you want to go? Because you already know what's stopping you, but let's truly understand where you wanna go. What's the main driver behind the reason you're going after this? And now let's understand all of the underlying stories and unhelpful emotions that are running the show so that we can clear them and rewire them. And also, as part of my method, I should have first started with that. I go through a 4-phase method that all goes together. There's not step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, but essentially the 4 pillars is regulate, clear, rewire, expand. So I look at my client work through those 4 lenses to see what needs to happen at this point in time. So to answer your question, the difference between implementing and knowing is knowing versus implementing is, first, let's get clear on what it is that you want, and let's understand the story underneath so that we know what angle to take. Do we need to regulate? Do we need to clear something? Do we need to rewire something? Because there's always something underneath that's essentially saying, "You don't get to have this." So let's
Yeah.
understand why and where it originated. So
Yeah, it's almost like the true belief of whether or not you really think you're capable of
right.
that.
Right.
And even just when I started my career just in the physical therapy realm, I saw it in a physical capacity. It's like a lot of times you can truly only bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can give somebody all
Yeah,
of the information, but they still won't apply it. And
exactly.
some of that can come from the gap of having to take that information and then implement it in your own home and environment and not
Mhm.
knowing exactly how that translates or how that looks in real time. But a lot of it comes down to the belief, the story, kind of the
Yes.
mindset, the identity, right?
Yes.
So we're going to get into a lot of that
Yeah.
today.
I wanted to add to that that a big piece, that can come into play as to why maybe someone might not be implementing, because you said something that prompted me, is, your surroundings, who you're surrounding yourself with. If you aren't surrounding yourself with people who are forward moving and alchemizing and transmuting their old stories into something new, then you're not supporting if you're not supporting yourself with the right environment, then you can only go so far. Like you said, you can only bring a horse to water. You also have to want to change and finally want to see who you are on the other side of it as well. But yes, you said that about the environment piece, and I wholeheartedly align with that, that your surroundings truly do determine also how far you can go. And you can control that. And we've seen that in your work with Feng Shui, personally, me experiencing it through your practice, that your environment is very important to all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's all very important, and
Mhm.
similarly, I implement 4 pillars into my work. Oops. Mine are the physical aspect, the energetic, the environmental, and the mindset, right? Because
Mhm.
again, it's like in physical therapy, for years, I used to always tell clients, ooh, the position you put your body in dictates what your posture turns out to be. And then your posture dictates how your body functions. And that is
Right.
true. But ultimately, your mindset and how you relate to it all determines the
Yes.
position that you're going to put your body in, which then determines your posture, which then determines how you function in life, right? So it's all kind of stacked, and then your environment either supports that or hinders that
Mhm.
ultimately, right? So,
Absolutely
and
agree.
to
Yeah.
me, the energetic it's less woo, it's more the expression or the transition of your thoughts, your emotions into actual action, right?
Right.
That's ultimately
Yes.
what it is, whether it be a reaction or an action. That's
Mhm.
kind of
I
what the
completely
energy
agree.
pattern is. But
Yeah.
otherwise, we have a few fun topics to talk about. I wanted
Yeah.
to get into some of the main things that your clients come in to see you for. And similarly, and then we can just kind of break it down on kind of what we would help them with and what we would do for them,
Yeah. I
essentially. So,
Yeah, I love little protocols. I live
yeah.
on Give me the step by step. Give me like a mini
I
action
do
plan.
too,
I
but
love
I
that so
will
much.
say for the things that I'm contributing, I have so many notes because it is hard for me to whittle it down because it is also customizable and tailored to the
Yes.
individual person. So realistically, I have just endless recommendations for each category, but I did my best.
Likewise, I'm glad that you said that because I was thinking the same thing. And as long as everyone listening considers this is a generalized approach to the things that we're going
Yes.
to chit chat about. But essentially, what we do in our individual work is very bespoke and tailored. Not everyone is the same, not everyone has the same background. So we take a generalized approach in our chit chat, but everything is very personal when we're really in a one on one setting.
Yes, yes, it has to be. Well,
Yes.
we prefer it to be.
I prefer it to be,
Yes,
yes,
we
that's why
prefer.
we get along so well.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so let's put this into practice. So let's talk about people say they know they want something more. They know they want more in general. Maybe they want to earn more or expand what they're doing professionally, but confidence or self worth keeps getting in the way. So, what does setting yourself up for success actually look like? And starting with you from the mindset perspective, in terms of again, kind of the confidence, the self-worth, feeling like they can really push for more and earn more.
So, for confidence and self worth, we would first start by understanding what is it that you want. So, if you know that you want to feel confident and you want more self worth, what does that actually look like? Like, walk me through a week in your day as a confident person, as a person with high self worth. I need to understand the context of confidence and self worth in your life as it relates to money and success and everything else, because that will be very telling around the beliefs, the thought patterns that are happening. And then on that same note around beliefs, we're going to take a road trip back on the timeline and understand some of those original stories that might have informed your tiny little mind between ages 0 and 7 that you weren't a confident person or that you weren't worthy of the things that you wanted. Usually there's a story running in the background and we're going to dig for them. So let's create a blueprint. I call it my rewiring blueprint. It's very detailed where we understand all levels of the mind. But for confidence and self worth, I want to understand what those original stories were. Usually, once we understand those stories, I will identify some unhelpful emotions that we've been harboring, like hurt or sadness or shame or guilt of something. And we've been carrying it with us for so long that it's been informing how we show up. So once I identify that, I'll use a tool called neural energetic encoding to release those unhelpful emotions from the unconscious mind. Then we will regulate, or really we regulate first, but like I said, it's dependent on the person. But regulation is definitely going to be a piece of this blueprint is regulating your system because there comes a point where you don't feel confident. So, is it right before you're about to get on the sales call or right before you're about to get on stage or pitch yourself? Does the confidence take a nosedive? Where does the self worth take a nosedive? It's usually in the context of an action, of something that's about to happen. So I want to understand where that's happening so that we can regulate. And what I do in that instance is either EFT, which we talked about in part 1, which is so easy and accessible, and or resonance breath work where we create coherence between your heart and your breathing so that your amygdala is informed that you are not under threat. So, in summary, we understand for what purpose do you want confidence and high self worth? What are the stories underneath? We'll remove any unhelpful emotions with neural energetic encoding. Resonance breath work and EFT are some of the general approaches, but again, very personalized. What about you, Summer? What would you interject in that sense?
Well, and there is a lot of overlap there too, because, just in a physical sense, if you give somebody something to do and they don't, like, let's say you talk to them about the point where they feel a lack of confidence, right? And they have a
Right.
physical reaction. If I give them a physical task of, well, then just don't tense up in that time, right? Or just
Right.
relax your body, relax. Like, it doesn't work that
Right.
way, right?
Right.
So that's why some of these methods that you're introducing are very helpful, because it's kind of the bridge between the mind and the physical in terms of getting the neurological and the mind body connection, essentially, but in a
Right.
subtler, more gentle way.
Mhm.
So I love that and just wanted to point that out. And energetically, honestly, I see this in many different ways. I would say the visibility and taking up space aspect, there's a lot of fear there, and lack of confidence and insecurity around that in terms of, do they actually feel safe being seen at at the level that they want to
Mhm.
achieve. And there's a lot of worthiness, self-worth, and feeling like, do I deserve this? Which can also be tied back to imposter syndrome, of course, which is a
Yes.
very hot topic, right?
Yes.
It's like people are intellectually capable, but they're internally just questioning whether or not they have the right to be in that room.
Oh,
And you can physically feel it energetically as well, but it
yes.
ultimately leads to them holding back, not putting themselves forward.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of times I see this in there's like a breaking between the push versus the pull.
Mhm.
And because of the lack of confidence, people feel like they need to keep taking everything on themselves. Like, they don't want to reach out, ask for support, ask for help, because then they'll have to share their inner knowings, their inner workings with somebody else. And what if it's not ready yet? What if it's not perfect yet? What if they're not ready for people to see it yet?
Right.
But ultimately, I like to remind people of, everybody's familiar with the whole starter home scenario, right?
Mhm.
Of everybody understands the first home that you hopefully buy in your life is usually a starter home. It's not meant to be your best and brightest version of your home that
Right.
you'll ever experience in your life, but it's your starter home. It's still something to be very proud of, but it's the same
Mhm.
thing energetically. It's like we need to learn to be comfortable, feel safe with what we're putting forth from ourselves before we're ready for other people to let it be seen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, and yeah, and then also with some of this confidence and self-worth, which I will talk a lot about this later, but there's, of course, the fear of change and the fear of the unknown.
Mhm.
You know, um, Change can be scary to people. And sometimes, people feel like, well, at least I'm familiar with this situation. So it's a bit easier, right?
It's easier.
But it's a bit tricky as well. But energetically, for me, I feel the push versus the pull a lot in differences between left versus right-sided energies, and in terms,
Mhm.
and actually a lot of times I recommend a Feng Shui principle for people, and that each day try veering a bit more towards what you feel pulled towards out of intrigue, interest, curiosity, or things that actually feel like you, especially if we're working on confidence, self-worth, things that make you feel powerful or empowered or insightful, whatever it is, right?
Right.
And start to veer a little bit more away from the things that you feel pushed to do out of mere obligation. And you
Right.
have to pay your bills, you have to do certain things. So do the responsible adult things, but don't let your entire life be taken up by fulfilling other people's obligations, right?
Right.
A lot of confidence comes from getting in touch with who you are as a person, your own
Mhm.
wants, your own needs, and making sure those needs are met as well.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's kind of the overgiving and stifling authenticity in a lot of ways, which then that can feel like a big difference in, or block, or imbalance in the heart chakra area as well, in terms of the
Wow.
giving and receiving.
Wow.
Um, Physically, posturally,
Mhm.
again, my energetics is more the bridge between the thoughts, the emotions, to actually how we live out our life with that information, right? So,
Mhm.
physically, posturally, I always tell people your body tells on you, it doesn't lie, right? So, even when we
Yes.
think we're keeping things buttoned up with the expression on our face, our posture gives things away.
Yes.
So, we've all met people that, you know, we've interacted with people that have been physically kind of make themselves smaller, right? Or
Mhm.
let's say in interviewing in a business sense, you get a resume on paper, this person is perfect. They have all the qualifications. You're like, wow, this person's fantastic. They're going to do phenomenally. Then they walk in the room. If they're a little bit more timid, a little bit more shy, it's intellectually what they have on paper is not matching what you're visibly seeing in their persona,
Right.
right? So that doesn't feel great ultimately.
Right.
And for the person, they're self-sabotaging ultimately. So it's
Yeah.
very vital to kind of work on your inner confidence, your inner knowing, and making sure that what you want matches with what you're putting forth ultimately.
Absolutely. I remember when we did our Feng Shui session, something that you enlightened me with that I thought I had worked through at length and I was at a good place was the perfectionism. Where I think you went through all of my chakras, of course, I can't remember which one, but I remember in your report afterwards, even during our dialogue, you told me that the perfectionism was coming up, and that is something that impacts your level of self-confidence
Yeah.
and inner worth, and having that information from you gave me so much of a sense of more empowerment of, "Oh, I thought this was already done. It sounds that like it's still a little bit there." And then when I really did look at it, I realized, "Oh, it really has been there." When I backtracked the last couple of weeks, in working in my business and creating content and things like that, I realized, "Wow, she's absolutely right. What came up is still there's still some perfectionism that's coming up." And having that information from you allowed me to now approach certain areas in my business and let it not be perfect. I think it was one of those things that you told me is let it be you didn't say done is better than perfect. It was a lot more motivational and inspiring. It was more so along the lines of it's done. You did it to the best of your ability in that moment.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to put it out and allow yourself to iterate on it
Mhm.
afterwards, and that was really empowering from the
Yeah.
energetic, from the Reiki session, and, yeah, I just thought of that, of how that impacted me and how that goes into confidence and self-worth as well, and how that can show up energetically.
Yeah, I mean, perfectionism can really hold us at a standstill in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And ultimately, perfectionism sometimes can tie back to fear of change, right?
Yeah.
And that we want something to be perfect, or we don't feel ready to. We want this one thing to be so perfect because we really want to sit with it, right? Versus, okay, yes, I had a great time doing this one thing, but now I'm going to reassess at this different phase of life. And maybe
Mhm.
I've changed a little bit. So it's more about leaving room for potential. And same thing with different iterations of stuff. Let's take a website, for example. You make your
Mhm.
first website and you know, don't put it out or you put it out and it's not perfect. Eventually, you're going to change your mind anyways, right?
Yeah.
So even if you do wait until it's absolutely perfect, you've taken so much more time and effort waiting and waiting and waiting
Mhm.
when ultimately you're going to change it and you're going to change your opinion in years to come anyways. So don't
Yes.
overbox yourself in essentially
Mhm.
by thinking things need to be a certain way, essentially. There are no rules.
Exactly.
We've
There
created our
are
own
no rules.
boxes, essentially.
You are absolutely right. We've created our own boxes. They've been informed from past stories and we were never truly celebrated for, well, at least I can only speak for myself. Some of us were celebrated for trying. I personally was not as a kid. I wasn't celebrated for trying. If I got it wrong the first time, it was ridiculed. So
There
I
were
can
no
see
participation trophies in the back in the
exactly.
day for us.
Not for us, not for me. No, no, no. So I can see where my perfectionism comes in and that, taking it back to understanding the backstory as to where it came from, but also leaning on the energetic piece of it so that we can bring balance back to our body because we're energetic beings and the work that you do as well is very much energetic and we hold the stuck energy in our body and it's on us to release it, to bring balance back.
We really do. And especially with Reiki and Feng Shui, actually, because that's
Mhm.
just energy for your environment. It's
Right.
both situations and types of sessions. People usually always feel like, oh, well, I have been through this before and I thought I had worked through it,
Mhm.
for at least a portion of the session. But then when they realize a complete stranger just brought it to their forefront without really having talked about it before, then
Mhm.
it's pretty eye-opening for people to be like, "Oh, I'd have
Mhm.
a bit more work to do." But it's not in a scary way, but it's more just like turning on the light in a dark room. Now suddenly you see
Right.
what's there and you know what's to work with.
Exactly. And this is different from your question earlier about getting wanting to constantly heal. This
Mhm.
isn't that I at all, because I can probably think of a listener thinking, "Oh, but you said earlier, can't we then get trapped in the healing process?"
Yes.
Yes, and, uh, a lot of things can be true at once. I think this piece that we're talking about is an illumination, which you just said, turning on a light, something
Yeah.
that you didn't realize that that still had something left over, and that ultimately is in your favor, in service of where you're going, and it behooves you to address it if you want to really get to that next step, but it is not a means of getting trapped by it or getting stalled by it.
No.
Right? So
Yes, it's just a bit of awareness and then you keep
mhm,
calibrating and you keep
mhm.
evolving, right? Um, okay, we'll finish up the confidence topic. Let's say the last
Yeah,
aspect I would bring in is the environment as well, with the feng
yeah,
shui, of course.
wonderful.
And so speaking of, kind of the perfectionism aspect too, this is kind of funny, but sometimes people grow up thinking, or even with our own spaces, we think like, oh, this area is meant for, this is just the guest room, or this is just my office, this is just the formal space. It's almost like we've given our space areas that are totally off limits to us, right? Where we don't use them functionally, we avoid them. And that is a big thing that I work with people a lot on. They're tiptoeing around their own environment,
Mhm,
or they don't wanna open a certain things because, oh, the overwhelm that they will experience, or, they don't go into certain rooms because that's reserved for somebody else. But energetically, what you're doing is you're restricting your own permission to engage freely, okay?
mm,
So that is a big pivot to make in terms of, making sure that you don't have to ask permission from your surroundings for what you're trying to accomplish. And then leading into also learning how to trust your environment, right? So every single person, including kids, needs the safety and security of knowing that they can trust something, include especially themselves, right? So if I take a paper clip and set it down on a table, I want to know if I come back 24 hours later, that paper clip is going to be right where I left it, because
mm,
when I need it, I wanna know it's there, right?
yeah,
That's the type of trust that we should be able to garner from our environment, knowing that, you know, we're going to have the support when we need it. It is naturally supporting us. We don't have to fight for it, and that there
mhm.
aren't actual reminders that are deterring from that process as well, and kind of reminding us of what we're trying to shift out of.
I love that so much. There was, as you were speaking, I got reminded of, how our environment can really continue to fuel our confidence. Um,
Yeah.
because when you did the feng shui analysis in my home, I remember that there is this room at the front of the house that was meant for something different, and you could tell that I was avoiding it, and you sensed in without me telling you too much about it, you sensed, you said, "This room feels like it's stuck in the past." And you said, "Tell me more about this." And I had informed you that we really don't use it. I avoid it because I don't feel good in it. I feel as though it's not progressing. I feel confused by it. And
Yeah.
to the point of what we're talking about here around confidence and self-worth, it really did deplete my confidence in me. The fact that I would completely avoid an entire room in my home, I was so enlightening to realize, not knowing that it was truly affecting me physically and
Yeah.
energetically. And after we revised the layout and we implemented some of your recommendations, it feels much more different. I felt my sense of self-confidence increase now that the
Yeah.
room is being in use because I'm no longer avoiding it. And to your point, you made such a good point. Why the fact that our home should be energizing us. No aspect of our home should be depleting our confidence or our self-worth. And it is so interesting after the feng shui reading that you gave me, how I could see the ties between confidence and self-worth in my own
Yeah.
home through the rooms that I avoided or hadn't allowed myself the permission to make it what I wanted it to be in my own home.
Yeah, and just have a little bit more freedom with the process, right? Like,
Mhm.
you had it, if I remember, stuck in your mind of, like, it has to be this type of room, and
Right.
that was the thing that was really stuck in the past. It was almost like a past belief, right? But then
Yes.
also that room was near the entrance of your home, so it's something
Mhm.
that you're walking by every time you enter and exit your home or even pass by the main space, and similarly
Mhm.
for people, it's like when we, I don't know, wash our face, do our hair, do whatever, make ourselves a little bit more presentable, of course we feel more confident. You
Yes.
know, it's the
Yeah.
same with our home. If you're going to enter or if you're walking to your front door to welcome a guest, and you're walking past an unfinished room, you're not going to feel so proud of like you're going to
Right.
energetically show up a bit different and open the
Yes.
door a bit differently than if you feel like you have everything kind of set, you
Such a
know?
good point. Yes.
So yeah, it's a really interesting, fun process though for people, and it's fun because also you see the effects immediately, of
Mhm.
course. Even just changing one physical cue can make a big change for people.
It really does. Yes. It really
Yes.
does.
Okay, lovely. Well, let's shift into a next topic, which is more about identity shifts and habit loops, which
Mhm.
is perfect for switching one cue and then you can change a whole habit or
Yes.
routine. So what about when you already know where you're trying to go, but you keep getting pulled back into old habits or an older version of yourself? So let me know where you tend to start with the mindset aspect.
Yeah, so the identity level and knowing where you wanna go, but habit loops that we're still stuck in. So you mentioned something a little earlier that ties into this. One aspect is not feeling totally safe to own this new identity,
Yeah.
which then creates this cycle of us not fulfilling on the habits and behaviors that would serve us. So that's one aspect is identifying, do we feel ultimately safe occupying this new level of identity? And there are many layers that we can approach here. Secondary gains, which means what do you fear you might lose or might be required of you? Why do you feel much more comfortable where you are than you would where you're going? So we would look for what's driving that underneath. And then at the identity piece, the reason why habits and behaviors don't stick and why folks think that it's the driver, it's because we think that if we do this after 21 days, it's going to be an automatic habit and I'll never have to worry about it again. But if your identity is not aligned to the type of person who these habits come easily to, that's why you will always go back to that start, stop with your habits and behaviors. So we need to look at the identity of the person driving it. And this is where NLP is really incredible because NLP gives us also a framework called modeling. It's a framework that we can model success from. And this is where I walk my clients through and I ask them, the version of you who already has this easily, effortlessly, this is no question that this is already part of the reality. How do they move through life? What do they already believe about life, about the money that they have, the success? We go down through the values. What would you have to value in order for these habits and behaviors to be seamless and easy, something that you don't have to think about? And we go down what we call the logical levels of the mind. And essentially, it's everything that drives us, starting with our purpose, our identity, our beliefs, our values, habits, and our environment way at the bottom, but still our environment is really important. So once we have an understanding of all of those levels, I see where the disparity is. So where are we not where are things not moving fluidly? And this is where I might bring in a tool like hypnosis, because now I have an understanding of how you want to be, what you want to believe, um, how you want to show up in the world. And from there, using your own language, I create hypnotic scripts and create a personalized recording so that you can listen to, and your mind will more easily now grab onto that new identity. And before you know it, you're acting out these habits and behaviors, the ones that actually serve you, in a much easier way. It doesn't require the effort that it used to before. You just
Yeah.
kind of do it because it's who you are.
And
And
for those,
mhm,
wait, for listeners who might not have listened to part one yet, for the subconscious mind, there are kind of different levels and different tiers of things that you would like to address, pending where people are. And getting down to their beliefs is kind of like the catalyst that affects
mhm,
the other things. So if you go straight to habits, for example,
right.
it's the effect usually doesn't stick. You have to go to the deeper levels, essentially.
Exactly. We need to know, like, what's underneath the hood. Like, in a car, if your car is not functioning properly, you don't just sit there and say, well, if I continue to flip the key, the car will turn on eventually.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to go and pop the hood. It's not convenient because you might have to get your hands a little dirty. You might not be wearing the right attire. You weren't prepared to find what you found that day, but you have to open up the hood. And that's what our beliefs are. It's like opening up the hood and seeing, what is that thing that is creating all of this chaos unnecessarily? Another way to think about it is, many of us, I'm sure, have about 60 tabs open on our Google Chrome or our Safari at any time, right? I'm guilty of it too. How
Yeah.
often do you find that sometimes a sound is playing in the background and you can't figure out what tab it's coming from? That is what a limiting belief or an unhelpful emotion is. It's the music that's running in the background that you know that something's off, but you haven't addressed it. You haven't closed the tab that isn't allowing you to fully step into the identity that
Mhm.
you know is required in order to hold the new level of success and money that you are calling in. So, this is why I love to lean on hypnosis, because we go deep. We can program out, but we can also program in the things that you want. This is where we also continue with regulation, because your body needs to receive the information that it is safe to hold this new level of success that you are calling in order for you to be the identity of this person who either has multiple six figures or has a seven-figure business or is comfortable being on stages speaking to thousands of people. You need to hold a set of beliefs and ways of being that you need to feel comfortable with. And that's where regulation comes in. And we adopt resonance breath work in order to inform your system that all of this is completely comfortable.
Mhm.
What would you say on your end? How would
I
you
was just
approach
gonna say
this?
too, I love that you just ended with resonance breath work because I was gonna tie it into not resonance breath work specifically,
Yeah.
but back to the confidence topic and making sure what you're engaging in, especially with your new identity, is stuff that actually resonate with you, right?
Yes.
Um, and there is a lot that comes through energetically for people here. A lot of times it feels like a lack of clarity. For
Hmm.
me, it's almost like I can briefly be inside your thought processes in terms of how you're trying to process information. And there's usually a mismatch or an urgency of like wanting and yearning to be something and then but feeling like you're here. But a lot of times, realistically, what it is, it's kind of stuck in the old habits and
Hmm.
patterns, right? So it's the two just
Yeah.
are not on par yet. Um, and then there can be a bit of grief at times, right? In terms of releasing who you used to be and
Yes.
feel like even if it's a career pivot, even if you're pivoting to something great and you're leaving something else behind, people can still sometimes grieve the process, even if it wasn't a failure, or even grieve the people that they're leaving behind or grieve, just the differences that that might bring to their day to day, whether it be their relationships, the dynamics, what's expected of them, etc. You can still love an old part of your life and have it not fit you anymore. So
Summer,
that's
that
a lot of
is
the energetic push and pull that I pick up on,
yes.
I would say.
Yes. I wish we did talk more about the grief aspect that comes with occupying a new identity and leaving one behind or outgrowing one, however the vocabulary we want to use to describe it, but grief of an identity is something I wish we would talk more about. I've been
Yeah.
thinking about this one very recently too, so maybe we do another
Yeah.
conversation on it, but that is very true and we don't talk about it around the expectations that you thought you were supposed to assume and now you decided to change your mind and
Yeah.
you want something different out of life. But that grief of where you should have been, I should have done this, I could have done that, but allowing yourself, again, that permission to step into something new. But as you perfectly said, knowing why that is and what that is and why that is
Yeah.
also very, very important to allow ourselves to walk ourselves through that grieving process. But yeah,
Yeah.
not very
And
talked
then
about enough.
on the flip side, kind of,
Mhm.
there is a lot of association to past experiences with identity shifts, right? And so
Mhm.
sometimes it's grief over giving up something that we once loved and, but no longer fits. And sometimes, especially coming from, if client is coming more from the physical health realm, let's say, for physical therapy, it's the identity shift around giving up or fully moving on from the version of themselves that was kind of down and out, right? So I've worked with countless people over the years, which really got me into looking into more of the holistic and mindset strategies to start with years and years ago.
Mhm.
But even when I would get somebody structurally to a better place where structurally they're good to go, they're no longer technically injured, they should be able to resume living their life, right? A lot of times, physically, they leave the appointment, they go back home, they go back to doing the same exact things they were doing before, using the same modifications, holding themselves back in similar ways or sitting on the same side of the couch that they always sit on or whatever it is, right? And they still have the visual and physical reminders in their home, in their environment. All of that stuff keeps them in that old identity. And then the next time they come in, suddenly they have more pain again, And it really took
Wow.
working with people in terms of mindset practices with that
Yeah,
and kind of shifting the patterns, shifting the cues and kind of changing the loops, if you will. Um,
absolutely.
and yeah, it's not just about the physical pain clients. This is
Mhm.
about anybody. We experience something, let's say a betrayal in a relationship, for example. We don't
Right.
just experience that situation one time. And if we have a painful event, we don't experience that painful event one time. We're people, we
Mhm.
think about it. And when we think about it in our memory, we're firing up different parts of our brain and our body and the chemical responses and the physical responses and reactions that come with that. So we're
Yeah,
again kind of physically reliving that experience and keep on and reinforcing that old identity pattern. That's not saying you
you said
just
it.
shouldn't think about stuff. We need to think about stuff, but we need to process
Yes.
it in a productive way, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely.
And then in the physical stance too, if somebody does have more, pain, that's a bit easier to modify around
Mhm.
because the cues are more obvious in terms of certain pillows that they might use or certain furniture or adjustments or getting
Yeah.
them to engage in different aspects of their environment or their life a bit differently. But yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot there, you know?
Yeah. Well, you just reminded me as well that something that's important as part of this process is as the individual is taking steps to move into the new identity, you said something important. We have to audit our current life. We have to
Yeah.
audit every aspect of our life like an interior designer would come in and audit your home to see what needs to go, what needs to change in order to meet
Yes.
your vision of where you want to go. It's exactly the same for our own life. So if you're wanting to step into a new identity, but to your point, there are objects, things in your home, routines that you still adopt that are not aligned with where you're going, they just serve as a reminder of who you've been this whole time, which then further creates that resistance and the fear of change, the fear of becoming someone new because it's unfamiliar. You don't know
Yeah.
how to occupy that new identity. So it's easier to stay where you are. And that's where, at least personally, when in my personal life, but also in my client work, we do take an audit of everything that's happening in life, what the places that they go to, the type of people that they surround themselves with, what they watch, everything. We go through everything and we identify what has to go, even clothes,
Clothes
because
are important. Yeah.
clothes hold an energy. Clothes hold the identity for sure. I forget what the science term is for it, but there is a science term that describes the process of dressing like the version, like your future self.
Mm,
The idea that clothes do hold an identity, whether it's an old one or a new one, but it's a
yeah.
uniform, it's a mask, it's reinforcer of who you are or who you are becoming, and that's why it's so important to look at everything in your home, in your life, and see if it's just reinforcing old habits, old ways of being. It's time to reassess it. It's time to go. It's time to give it away, change it up, and give yourself the space to create something new, because
Yeah.
to your point, the reinforcement is absolutely true. And with the unconscious mind, if folks are not aware, the unconscious mind doesn't know what's real or what's imagined. So if you are looping an old thought, an old memory, and you are creating those feelings in your body because you either were angry or hurt or you're experiencing grief, anything, your mind thinks it's happening right now,
Exactly. Exactly.
right now. So it's
Exactly.
only going to create the response as if it's happening right now. So imagine how that balloons in your life, how that creates a ripple effect in your mind, the reinforcing of an old identity, the reinforcing of old emotions, old beliefs,
Yeah.
all of that. That's why it's so important to take this holistic approach that we're talking about to be able to allow us the safety to get into a new identity.
Yeah, of course. And it's, and you mentioned something there too, again, about the fear of change, right? The fear of letting go, kind of.
Mhm.
And it's, sometimes in these identity shifts, what holds people back energetically too is the whole, what if it doesn't work out, right? Or
Mhm.
what if people don't like my new identity? What if it doesn't go as I had planned, right? Or what if it isn't as I pictured?
Yeah.
And ultimately, what it comes down to for people is you really need to consider, like, what is really your worst case scenario if you do make a change for yourself. For most people, they're going to go right back to doing what they are doing today,
Mhm.
right? So why not just give yourself the possibility, give yourself
Exactly.
a little bit of runway? And I mean, I
Mhm.
understand it. And for all listeners out there, and you and I both, we can all take a moment to think about, what we feel in our physical bodies. What if we lost our jobs tomorrow and nothing was available and you didn't know what was coming next, right? What type of physical sensation in your body do you get in your body? A lot of people get a little bit of chest gripping, a little bit of tension, a little bit of shortness of breath,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that type of stuff happens. It affects your breathing, it affects your posture again, which then affects how you position and move about through your life, essentially,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And through your environment as well. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, with the feng shui type stuff, I view the environment just the same as kind of the body in terms of it all takes repetition. It's all based on muscle
Mhm.
memory, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
similarly with your environment with feng shui, you can set yourself up for success and by creating new visual cues, or like you said, kind of doing a purge. I did this roughly a year ago after a big move, and do a purge of kind of what you no longer need to keep at this phase of your life, right? And if you're I get a lot of people that are still afraid to get rid of stuff. So if you're one of those people, you
Yeah.
can still put a maybe pile to the side for later. But again, if you
Yeah.
never touch that maybe pile, there's your answer. You never have to go
Exactly.
through it again. If you never think about what's in that pile in the first place,
It's
then
time to go.
yeah, exactly. But there are so many different little changes that you can make in your environment to and it's not about throwing everything away either, but it's
Right.
about noticing what still carries the old story, your
Mm.
old identity, that old obligation or feeling that's tied to it that makes you feel like I should accommodate versus I choose to grow, elevate, whatever, right? So
Yes.
it's really a choice. It is a choice. And you can make
Is.
small changes in many different ways, whether it be your mindset, that's where you
Mhm.
ultimately need to go to kind of, we'll say, fully affect these changes. But then
Yeah.
ultimately, there are so many different ways where you can make change.
Right. Yes, there's so many things that can support where you're going, and it's knowing that they're available to you, and it is also a choice to
Mm,
lean on them to say, "You know what? I'm ready for this type of support. I'm going to go to Summer or someone like Summer, or I'm going to go to Heidi or someone like Heidi. I know that I need this and I'm committed." It is a
yep.
choice. We have to at one point we have to say, I'm so sick of being tired of the same loop, and at least I'm going to give it a go, because
Yeah.
you're going to learn something either way about yourself. It's only
Yes.
for your good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love your take on that.
Yeah. And if you want to start small, start with moving one thing in your environment, just like you were
Mhm.
talking about. I mean, you changed an entire front room, but by changing that room, you changed how you live differently, right? So you now
Absolutely.
utilize that room. You said you read in there, you do different things in
Yes.
there. So it's like you change your life and how you move about your life by making one small shift.
Yes, it doesn't have to be all at once. It could be little by little so that you can try on that new energy, because
Mhm.
honestly, you're going to love the feeling of the new
Yeah.
energy. It's just scary because you've just never felt it before, but you're going to love it. So little by little, take one little step. You make a like a plan for yourself, a little roadmap of, these are the things I'm going to try. But yeah, you're absolutely right. As soon as I changed up that room, and I didn't overhaul it in a way where I had to go out and buy a whole
You
new
didn't.
room decor, I just repositioned things I already had in my home thanks
Yes.
to your suggestion,
Yes.
and it was, you told me, "You know what? Grab the 2 couches that are in your office, move them up here. That rug that I see over there, put it under here." So it was just a repositioning, and it
Yeah.
really did give me a new energy. I enjoy the room. I tap into a future version of me every time I sit in that room, because I sit down in that room to read books that
Yeah.
are very specific to how I want to feel and how I want to act in the world. And it's just a place where I anchor more of the things that I'm calling in. So that's the power of even just shifting things in your home to support the identity that you're stepping into.
Yeah, and simultaneously, we then also eliminated a lot of the background concern and,
Yeah.
mind ruminating that you had going on about
Yes.
that space too, right? So
Yes.
just by
Absolutely.
making a couple of simple changes, you
Mm.
eliminated the struggle and added more vitality
Oh my
and
gosh.
fulfillment.
Perfectly said.
So
Yes.
it's really quite it's why this is really the fun part of the process, I would say.
Yes.
I
It
think.
is. Yes. I think so too. It was fun.
Yes. Okay, cool. Well, let's switch to talking about this is another one that kind of segues off the first two, but more so playing small, and kind of getting into that upper limit ceiling where which can
Mhm.
also tie into self-sabotage habits,
Yeah.
right? So there's the point where people know they're ready for something different, but actually crossing the threshold feels very uncomfortable. So
Yes.
tell me where you start with people there.
So with upper limits, this is definitely my area of expertise with the first generation women that I work with. This is very prevalent because they've achieved a level of success that no one else has, and they've gotten to the peak that they've never seen anyone around them model for them. So self-sabotage can happen, the upper limit happens, you feel like you've hit a ceiling, like you want more, but you keep falling into these unconscious patterns and you keep wondering the same thing keeps happening to me. So this is where I default to unconscious conflicts. And there's usually 3 with the women that I work with. The first is fear of what it will mean about me, fear of what will be required of me, and fear of who or what I will lose. So we look at those 3, we in detail, we get an understanding of what's driving each of those 3, and usually here, I employ what's called internal family systems, parts work. There's usually, if you've ever found yourself saying, part of me wants this, but part of me wants X, you have a part. That's just a version of you within you that wants something different. And usually, the reason that they want something different and you feel that internal tug of war is because a part of you is trying to protect you from perceived danger. Because at some point in your life, there was something similar happening in your life or a metaphor of what you're currently experiencing. It happened when you were younger and your unconscious clocked it as unsafe, abort, no, alert, alert, we can't move further than this. So, with internal family systems, I get to understand these parts of you and we bring them into synchronization, basically, bring them into alignment. Most recently, a client of mine discovered that she wanted to have multiple, what is it, five, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5-figure months, multiple 5-figure months. But there was a part of her that said, "This isn't safe." And what we discovered is that it was a 7-year-old part of her that said, "Well, if you get this successful, you're going to leave certain people behind, and we don't that feels really unsafe." So in that process, long story short, we created an inner understanding in her inner world that what she was going for was ultimately good for all involved. Like, once you understand that what you are going for is good for you, for the planet, for the world, for your community, you just see that it is good for you to have it.
Mhm.
And aside from the unconscious conflicts that we address with parts work, usually we'll have to also employ something like single belief change, which is wiring in a new set of beliefs, such as people like me or someone like me is allowed to have what I want.
Mhm.
It's safe for me to earn this much money. So we understand like what are the beliefs that she wants to actually have and believe to be true. And we use this NLP technique called single belief change to make the change in her mind so that now it just feels like her ultimate truth in her body. So in short, with upper limits, it's usually finding out those secondary gains, like why don't you want it? What do you fear will be required of you? And who do you feel you're going to lose or leave behind? Is it family? Is it parents? Is it grandparents? Do you feel a sense of shame that you're making more money than your parents ever did, and somehow you feel that that's going to diminish their efforts? Things like that. We go very deep because that's how the unconscious is. It creates a record of everything, and it ultimately just wants to protect us from even the things that we want, even if they are good for us, because it's unfamiliar, it's always going to want to protect us from it. And then from there, we'll decide depending on the person. Do we do more EFT? Do we bring in another level of hypnosis? Do we do self-image work like the NLP modality called swish pattern, where we swish in your mind how you see yourself? Because ultimately, sometimes when we hit an upper limit, is because we have to work on our self image. We don't see ourselves as the type of person who has this even greater vision. So we work on self image as well. So those are some of the things that we would do. What about on your end when you
That
hear that?
that's really interesting, and it's I can't help but think as you're saying all of that,
It's a lot of the internal work. And as you mentioned, it was 3 topics for this category of like fear of
Mhm.
this, fear of this, fear of this, right? So it's a lot of internal work and fear around the external consequences of
Mhm.
if I do this, then what happens? Do
Yeah.
I lose people? Do I whatever? Do I, all of that. So it's just really interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Um, Energetically to me, this feels, you know, the playing small, the self-sabotage, and the upper limits, again, it's all very tied, but to me, it feels energetically like a stop-start
Yeah.
energy. And sometimes I would say for a lot of people, I pick it up at the crown chakra in terms of it feels almost like um, an ADD or ADHD type of energy where it's just,
Mhm.
very fast paced thinking and it's more about not having the clarity on what they need to do themselves yet to move
Mhm.
forward, right? So it's like they're taking into consideration all the external things and the
Yes.
feedback and the considerations, and then they lose their own sight, you know?
Mhm.
And they lose their own grounding and presence with themselves essentially on what their goal was, what they're authentically trying to bring forward. They're just a bit caught up in the external consequences of it all, I guess,
Yes, exactly.
to bring it back.
Yeah.
Also, this is where a lot of the perfectionism and control comes into play as well.
Mhm.
Because ultimately, if you do reach a certain level and then you want to push further and you mess up or you put something out that isn't perfect, then suddenly the fear is a bit bigger because there might be more eyes on you. And what
Mhm.
does imperfection ultimately say about you? Right. And that's kind of what the belief comes down to.
Right.
Not that imperfection actually does say anything about anybody. And
It
it does not.
doesn't, but exactly, it doesn't. It just means that we're human and at least we tried.
Yeah.
How many of us don't try anything ever? And if we're what usually most of us are afraid that imperfection will say is that we're not good enough
Yeah.
or fear of rejection, like we don't belong. And yeah, I think it's a big permission slip to how can we become more how can we slowly become more comfortable with doing things imperfectly? Maybe start a new hobby that allows you to be imperfect because you have no choice but to be imperfect and
Yeah.
show
That's a
yourself
good
that it's
idea.
completely safe to do it. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly, and get comfortable with, I mean, messing up, I guess,
Yeah.
and putting things out that are just okay,
That they're okay
you
and it's
know,
fine.
and
We're
that you don't
trying.
go back and correct them after either.
Yes.
It's a
Still working on
practice.
that. I'm still
Yeah,
working on that one.
me too. Yeah, same. Well, at least leave yourself the freedom and the adaptability to
Exactly.
pivot and redo things when you see fit,
Exactly.
you know?
Yes.
Okay. And then getting back to kind of the lack of clarity and kind of the losing sight of what holds meaning and how to move forward for people versus the external stuff. This is tied in a big way to me. I feel it a lot in the third eye, the throat chakras, and the heart chakra as well. But it's about your of course your thought processes, how you're living things out, but then also your intuition, how you can assess your own intuition. Can you rely on it? Do you trust it? Are you even aware that it's there? And can you pick up on the signs like an intuitive nudge versus a fear-based nudge, for
Mhm.
example, right? Something that is keeping you in the playing small mentality versus something that is actually priming you for something that might be helpful and beneficial for you, but also might be scary because it's pushing you out of your comfort zone a bit, you know? So it's similar types of feelings, but different types of energies and very
Yes.
different qualities, right? And with the third eye, it's really about, again, noticing it, trusting it, then learning how to act on it.
Mhm.
And then that leads me into, and again, throat chakra is more about the authenticity of it as well, in terms of, yes, intuitively, can you be aware of it? And in terms of, and start to put it into action. But the throat chakra is more about kind of, is it authentic and does it actually resonate with who you are as a person, what you'd actually want to say, what you would actually want to bring forward, what you actually feel purposeful doing, again, versus kind of the censored stuff from some of the external
Right.
feedback, if you will.
Such a good point. Yes.
Yeah. And then the last topic energetically that comes up is this is a big one. So it's the difficulty kind of receiving success and holding the good,
Mm,
also without immediately getting wrapped back up into hustle culture. You
yes.
know, it's like the difficulty allowing something to be good and successful without feeling like you need to immediately chase after the next thing. Or if I don't keep
Mhm.
going, I'm going to lose my momentum. Because then you never give yourself the time to reassess, to make a small pivot versus saving it for the huge pivot when you realize way later in life, maybe I climbed up the wrong ladder, right? It's give yourself a bit more space there. Um, and yeah, it to me energetically, it feels very high energy, very energizer bunny, but it doesn't feel stable.
Mhm.
It feels uneasy and it feels almost like if you've had a really long workout and your muscles feel weak from fatigue, that's what it feels like, but also just like go, 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 right? It's not
Yes.
pleasant. It's not a pleasant state for your nervous system and your energy to be in long term. Um,
Right.
and again, that comes in I can feel a big difference in left versus right sides because it can be tied to the balance of giving and receiving as well. In terms of, again, you're achieving success, but then do you let yourself actually absorb and receive and be present in the moment before you move on to the next thing, you
Right.
know? And for a lot of people, if they are the first person in their family to achieve certain things or whatever,
Mhm.
they don't have a roadmap, so they don't know what am
Mhm.
I supposed to feel like? What does it look like when people get to this level? What do people behave like? You know,
Exactly.
they kind of have to write their own story from scratch, which can sound scary or it can sound like a real opportunity, you know?
Oh my gosh, I love how you just put that last phrase, or it can be a real great opportunity
Yeah.
to curate what that is and to also curate your environment. This is why it's so important to surround yourself with people who are either in the same space that you are or even a bit further ahead than you because it continues to calibrate the normalcy of where you are.
Mhm.
And to the point that you were saying around receiving, it allows us to make receiving feel normal and allow us to sit there for a little while because as you were saying, if we're continuing to chase the next thing, then are you going to be surprised that you're going to be burnt out? It's because you didn't give yourself the chance to sit in the receiving for
Yeah.
a season, for a time. We don't know how long each person is supposed to sit in their receiving. You'll know that for yourself. But if you're just received something big, you achieved something big that you were working really hard towards, and your immediate response is, okay, I've got to keep going because what if it's all taken away, or if the other shoe drops, or if I sit down and relax, it means that everything's going to fall apart. You have a receiving problem.
Yeah.
You need to sit with it, calibrate, regulate, energetic work, balance things out, your environment, all of the above that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, and your body and and your nervous system feel it physically.
Yes,
Trust me, and
absolutely.
I can see it. I can sense it. And for a lot of time, or for a lot of people, this looks like it could be a closed, guarded posture, it could be jaw tension,
Mhm.
abdominal gripping. The amount of clients that I've worked with over the years that they don't come to me with gut health issues, but they end up telling me, "Oh yeah, I have a SIBO diagnosis or Crohn's or IBS or whatever."
Yeah.
And a lot of that, they have a physical abdominal gripping pattern going on where they've
Mm.
almost energetically shut down that area of their body, right? And they're almost in an overly held and just braced position, kind of ready for the next
Right.
thing. And that is exhausting, you
That
know?
is. I wonder, Summer, in your work, have you ever encountered clients who come in and say like the tight jaw? Like
Oh,
if they're
yeah.
always like almost biting down on something,
Clenching,
clenching, that's the
grinding. Yeah,
term.
clenching, grinding,
Yes.
clicking, TMJ stuff.
Mhm.
I've had to needle people's jaw quite a bit as well over the years
Wow.
because it's something that happens, and then as we're everything is digital, virtual these days,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
we're on our devices. So as
Mhm.
we're striving for more, yearning for more, pushing for more, working more, we're usually on those devices. But yeah, things like this get even worse. So
Yeah.
we have natural things in life that are going to tense up our bodies in certain ways. So we don't need to add to them by some of these subtle avoidable things, right?
Exactly. Well put. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I also like asking people about their all or nothing physical habits, because there seems to
Good
be
one.
very little middle ground, which kind of goes back to what we talked about in part one, because it's, again, with the hustle culture, it's like the always on and then the crash, right?
Yeah.
It's the in between where people are like, they struggle because they feel like, well, I'm going to have to focus soon. How do I get enough energy that I need? How do I get myself up to that level again? And then on the flip side, when they're trying to come out of that, it's like they realize they have limited amount of time to sleep before their next big day. But then
Mhm.
how do they power down? They can't stop their mind from racing. It's all a habitual process,
Yeah.
for your body as well, not just for your mind, for your body, your
Yes.
mind, your nervous system, all of it.
Yes.
Um, and going back to some of the mindset thing, you said this at the start of this category, but I like to take this one step further because you asked, people, what do you notice in those moments where you do tend to hold yourself back, essentially, or what are those moments? And I like to ask people too, what does your body do when you picture yourself actually taking the step that you've been avoiding, right? And
Mhm.
noticing the physical tension patterns or the positions or
Mhm.
whatever we default to, even shifting your weight, it all has meaning. And we
Mhm.
all have patterns. And my biggest goal with people is to get people to unbias the bias. So start
Good.
just true balance is never possible, but start just evening things out where you can.
I love when you always say that about start to even things out.
Yeah.
That feels more digestible and doable. I remember when we did our PT session, you told me simple when you're cooking because you noticed an imbalance in my posture, in my hips, and you said something as simple as when you're cooking, and you notice that you're on your right side. Switch it up to your left side. And
Yeah.
truly, that has really worked because it's a small moment that I can cue and say, "Okay, I'm aware, I'm not standing
Mhm.
properly. This isn't good for me overall if I continue to do this." So it's an active choice to say, "Okay, I'm going to balance it out right now in this moment," and practice the self-awareness. And even what it does for me is bring me back into presence as well when I'm noticing these things rather than
Yeah.
the squirrel mind of going 100 miles an hour in other directions. This small little practice of bringing back self-awareness and presence in that moment, I get back into my body and I notice, how am I standing? I Aside from that, I also notice that sometimes when I'm cooking or chopping, I'm hunched over
Yeah.
really deeply, and I think, "No, no," the going back to identity work, I say the version of me who has these things and she's confident and self-aware, she doesn't hunch over, she stands in a great
Yeah.
posture. So it's all full circle. What I'm trying to get at is that it truly is a holistic approach, and it comes full circle. And approaching this from all of the different tools, modalities, it just brings this beautiful harmony into life, and it just brings you back to your present. And like we said earlier in the conversation, rather than comparing to someone else, we're just comparing to ourselves, comparing to
Exactly.
how much we improved from yesterday or from the moment before, and
Yeah.
it's just about us.
And even in my sessions, I like to assess people with semi fresh eyes at each session for that
Mhm.
exact reason, too. Like, we should always be comparing ourselves to ourselves at that point in time, not locked into X number of weeks ago when we first started
Yes.
X program, right?
Right.
Because hopefully you've changed since then. That's the point.
Yes,
That's the
that's
point
the
of people
point.
doing programs. So
Yes,
if you haven't made change yet, then, that's maybe a different story for
it's an
a different
invitation.
day.
It's an invitation to
There
take
you go.
audit.
Yes, there you go. And then lastly, feng shui-wise, for this group of people, what I would really want them to pay attention to and just take notice of in their own environment, again, is pick one thing that they've been avoiding and physically walk through what it takes to start it in your current environment. So ask yourself, where is the friction and what is one step that you can remove
Mhm.
towards achieving that goal, right?
Right.
So if you're yearning for something, striving for something, etc., think about what it would require from you in your environment. What would make it a little bit easier? And then remove one point of friction. That's it.
Yes.
It's a simple one.
It is. It really is.
Yeah, and it's just about making sure things are there to support you, not deter. A
Right.
lot of times people think they assume that feng shui is simply about minimizing and removing distractions. And that is another recommendation I would have for these people because it can be very easy, myself included, to
Yeah.
get caught up in the, oh, well, let me put this away or this and this before you can
Mhm.
actually sit down and focus. But if there are also things in that lineup that don't actually fit in with what you're trying to move into and who you're trying to become, then
Mm.
it's no longer obligation that's purposeful. It's literally just extra task.
Exactly.
So to me, the feng shui process is pretty vital in removing a lot of that excess. And then you kind of get down to the meat of what you're really working with.
Exactly. Oh, how beautiful.
Okay, let's talk lastly about some fun things, some fun little bits of advice that we're tired of hearing in the wellness space. Um, we talked last time, I think, about the word manifestation in general and how
Mhm.
it's not just about wishful thinking. There's a lot of action behind it. So maybe let's talk about protecting your peace.
Oh, one of my favorites.
Yes. I know.
So I am a proponent of protect your peace, but I do see some folks lean so far to one end of the pendulum where they avoid
Oh, yeah.
things. And one thing is to protect your peace because you're so self aware that you know what's good for you and what isn't, what serves your energy, what depletes it. That's wonderful. As an example, for me, I know that big, loud, and crowded places don't serve my energy. It feels very depleting when I'm in there, and when I leave, it feels like I'm trying to restore my energy from those scenarios. So even big conferences, I protect my peace by avoiding them when I can, but avoiding them meaning finding something else that would benefit me. The other side of the pendulum is avoiding something because you have not truly identified the root of what is causing the contraction, the sour feeling, the bad taste in your mouth of something, because you're avoiding confrontation, things that you haven't healed and you're trying to avoid. That is the other side of the pendulum of protect your peace. So I always like to ask myself, am I protecting my peace because I know this is not optimal for my energy and where I'm going? Or am I really just trying to avoid a part of myself, a shadow that I haven't healed, that I don't want to look at because it's easier to run away from? So, yes, if you're avoiding, look inward first because that's also
Mhm.
not healthy. That's not
Yeah.
truly protecting your peace. What would you say, Summer, about that?
Yeah. Okay. I have mixed feelings as well. So I agree and protect your peace in the sense of boundaries and having
Hmm.
boundaries for yourself, especially in regards to others. But maybe I should start on the opposite end, in which I really feel it with clients energetically in terms of they protect their peace by not engaging or they let other people dump on them constantly and
Mm-hmm.
they support others, they listen to others, they just they hold other people's emotional burdens
Hmm.
for them, right? It's again the balance of give and take. So to me, that's where boundaries become very important because you're part of the problem, essentially. You're allowing this to happen to you. And I had to learn this myself, trust me.
Yes.
But you have to set boundaries with yourself and with others in terms of you can still be supportive and not take things on, right?
Right.
So you can still have a listening ear and maybe say, I'm so sorry, I don't have the time for this at the moment. Do you mind if we talk about this later? I have a bit of time then. Or, you can set the parameters. so that
Exactly.
you are still protecting your peace, your energy. You're not getting pulled off focus or off task when you're in the middle of something too. That is protecting your intention more than anything, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's
So
where it
good.
comes up a lot energetically. It's just
Yes.
people, it's the people pleasing type of thing, kind of in a way, and
Yes.
feeling like you just want to help others. It's really a kind effort and a compassionate
Mhm.
effort, but it's usually detrimental for the person that's taking
Yes.
everything on. So it's not
I
great.
agree.
And then lastly, let's talk about um, stay in alignment. There's so many.
Yes.
So as I'm a deep sigh, I'm like, oh, which
Yeah.
one do I want to pick? Stay in
They're all so good. Yes, stay in alignment. Gosh, this one I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is wishy-washy because what does that even actually mean? Stay in alignment of what? And yes, I'm trying to focus my thought on this one because sometimes I look at that term when I see it come up on social media and I think, okay, but what does that mean in being in alignment? Is it being in alignment with yourself, with something external? Is it about bringing back your own inner self power? And but also what comes to mind is that avoidance as well of don't do anything that is out of alignment. Well, are we avoiding the challenge that will actually grow us because
Mhm.
it feels uncomfortable, but the metaphor, the butterfly has to be in the cocoon for a while and feel really uncomfortable until it comes out and flies. So, staying in alignment versus are we avoiding getting out of our comfort zone because that just feels too scary. Or staying in alignment because we really are being discerning of our own boundaries, of things that we know are not good for us, and we're outgrowing certain people, places, things. And so we need to practice staying in alignment. So, again, I think this is another great example of swinging far too much on one side. Are we avoiding the things that would potentially actually be good for us? Or too far the other side where we're just like love and light everything and we don't, stay positive all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Those
one
are
of
a
those
few.
things that's like the word alignment is very different than using align as a verb, for example. Like
Mhm.
alignment itself is just so wildly up to interpretation.
Yes.
And even if I just break it down to just the physical therapy, the bodily aspect, it's,
Yeah.
alignment for one person structurally is can be generically similar for the other person, but again, it's going to be totally different based on their history, their past experiences,
Mhm.
their specific anatomy, what's going on cellularly and systemically in their body, their life, etc. Right? So it's I don't know, I think it's something that is put out there so often and put out
Mhm.
there in such a simple way of like, "Oh, just get yourself in alignment, get yourself in
It's
balance."
meant to be
But
good.
it is again, it's so nuanced. So to me,
Yes.
ultimately, it's really trying to say something specific without really saying much, you know?
Exactly.
Now,
Exactly.
I do like talking to people about the different ways that they can align their mind and body, their environment and their whatever,
Mhm.
right? Like you want to get things aligned in terms of
Yes.
your goals and what you're putting forth in terms of action and how you're showing up. But I don't think alignment itself as a categorical goal is a thing.
Exactly. I agree
I
with
don't
you.
know. It's a tricky one for me.
It's so generalized going back to NLP. We can generalize it and every person can make their own interpretation of it based on where they are in their life. But yeah, such a good point. For me, it goes back to if it's creating an avoidance pattern, then maybe perhaps not good. So
Yeah.
use it as a filter for asking yourself, am I avoiding something with this that would actually be good for me? Or am I avoiding something because I don't want to face it? Yeah. But yeah,
Well, and
that's
even in
a good
feng
one.
shui, as you remember, we talk about aligning and balancing the elements.
Mhm.
And this kind of goes hand in hand with, the stay in balance is also the same as
Yeah.
stay in alignment. And um, again, there's no true balance for everything. And one person's balance is different than another person's balance based on
Yes.
what they have going on in their life, their family, their
Yes.
home, their body, all of it, right? It's just different. And there might be different proportions of different elements that we need to introduce into different spaces based on what this person needs and what they have going on versus the other. So again, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
But there's so many more. Well, thank
Yeah.
you
So
again
good
for
one.
chatting with me today. I mean, we had so much to say again.
Always. It's never a dull moment when we get
No.
together and have the deep, deep conversations. So,
Yeah.
such a good one. I can't wait to hear what comes of this one and what everyone resonated with.
Yes, I can't wait to hear as well. Hopefully there's, there's definitely quite a few, but hopefully there's more than a few actionable steps that people can start implementing and just see what it looks like for them.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Heidy, thank you again for round 2. Everyone else, maybe skip the self-improvement homework this week. Save this one instead. You'll need it later. Until next time.